following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hello, and welcome to all of you listening wherever you may be along the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Claire Hall, and this is another edition of the program called Ask Claire, where Ralph Tycho, the creator of Comfortably Zoned, I don't think he regrets it yet, but basically he said, okay, you can have a program and you can talk about anything you like. And we have had wide-ranging topics and guests in our first few programs. And I'm looking forward to tonight because we're getting back again to one of my very favorite subjects, baseball, and especially the Brooklyn Dodgers. And another host along the Comfortably Zoned network. I've been a guest on his program several times, so now I get to turn the tables. Peter Trunk, good evening. How are you, my friend?
How are you, Claire? Good to be with you.
Oh, I'm great. It is a stormy Monday night here on the Oregon coast, but I'm warm and toasty in my home, and I'm talking to a friend, so it's great.
There you go. Stormy Monday Blues.
Yeah, that sounds like a song. Well, you know, we have gotten to know each other through Facebook, through our mutual passion for the Brooklyn Dodgers. I am one of the administrators of a couple of Facebook groups that celebrate the legacy of the Brooklyn Dodgers, and you are, I would have to say without a doubt, one of the most regular and spirited contributors and participants to those groups. So I think that's how we first forged a bond of friendship. But I would like to hear a little bit, and I think other folks would be interested in hearing more too, about, you know, maybe your growing up and where your attachment to and how the attachment to the Dodgers began. So take it away, please.
You know, this story has been told 1,000 times by 1,000 different men and women. But it did, you know, I could start with a cliche. I was born in a log cabin, which I helped my father to build, you know, trying to be funny. But I was born in Brooklyn. And being born in Brooklyn, I found out later, makes you a semi-celebrity in that whenever you go to a party or whenever you're in a group of people and stuff, when people say, well, where are you from? Where were you born? And you say Brooklyn. They go, Brooklyn, and the whole place turns and looks at you. They all have smiles on their faces and stuff. Some of it is negative, some of it is positive, but it's all in fun. And it's like, oh, my God, Brooklyn, gee whiz. But, yes, I was born in Brooklyn, and I was raised in a house that was a four-family house in East New York section of Brooklyn on Essex Street, 135 Essex Street. The building is still there. It's still a four-family house. And who lived in the house? All of my family lived in the house. My father and mother and my sisters and brother lived with me in one apartment. And in the other apartment was my father's brother. In the next apartment was my father's sister. And then in the next apartment was another one of my father's brothers. And the thing that makes it so crazy is that not only did we all live in the same four-family house, but along the street that I was raised on, right across the street, my Uncle Joe lived. Next door to him, my Uncle Matty lived, and it just goes on and on. Like the whole street was lousy with our family. I mean, you couldn't go 50 feet without bumping into an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or whatever. So we all lived. Yeah, it was a wow, and I loved it. I didn't get to enjoy it for too many years because my father was a school teacher. My father was a teacher. He actually taught at St. John's University, but the money was actually better for teaching in Newark, New Jersey at the time. It was the highest in the country. So my father and mother actually moved us across the river. He bought a house, my father did, and moved us across the river to Newark, New Jersey, the Vailsburg section of Newark. But every single Sunday, without fail, we would go back to Brooklyn and go to this house on 135 Essex Street and would all eat together, and the adults would drink together, etc. All the apartments, by the way, not only didn't lock their doors, they didn't close their doors. So everybody's door was open. So if I was riding my tricycle, I could go in and out of my apartment, my aunt's apartment, my uncle's apartment, whatever. And it was quite a scene. And we were all avid Brooklyn Dodger fans. And the thing that people don't realize that are not from Brooklyn, you could be an avid Cubs fan or an avid Pittsburgh Pirate fan or whatever, you name the other team, and it was like a normal thing, quote unquote normal. It was anything but normal to be a Brooklyn Dodger fan, because Brooklyn Dodger fans, they rooted for the Dodgers from the first pitch of the opening day all the way to the final pitch of the World Series, which we usually were in, and it didn't stop then. Whereas other fans of other teams, it would stop, and you would concentrate on Thanksgiving, and then you would concentrate on Christmas and New Year's and, I don't know, Valentine's Day or St. Patty's Day, and then you'd start getting ready for spring training or something like that. In Brooklyn, it never stopped. It never stopped. It was 365 days a year. You could be in the butcher shop with your mother or your father, and you could be getting a haircut with your father at the local barber shop, and someone would be in there and they would just say, what's the deal with Ferrillo's arm? Or what about Campanella's hand? How did that surgery come out with his hand? Did he break his left hand or his right hand? You would talk Brooklyn Dodger baseball 365 days a year. So it was different in that respect. And, it's lost on the young people today. All my adult life, I've been trying to explain it to the younger people in my family, and they seem to get it, but I don't know if they really do get it. You yourself are a bunch of years younger than I am, and you're not from the Northeast. So you have seen movies, you have read articles, you have read books, you have written books, but you've interviewed people, you've done all kinds of stuff, but you weren't there and you didn't really live it. And the thing is, in the deepest recess of your brain, you might think that much of this, or a portion of it, is exaggerated. But it's not. It's not exaggerated at all. If you go on Baseball Fever, which is a place on the internet, Baseball Fever, one of the things they have are teams that don't exist anymore. They have a section for the Brooklyn Dodgers, the New York Giants, the Montreal Expos, et cetera, Philadelphia Athletics, St. Louis Browns. You just keep going all the way down the list. And you can see, excuse me, how many people participate in these different subjects. And if you look at, let's say, the New York Giants, they'll have like 12,000 entries. The St. Louis Browns will have like 6,000 entries. The Washington Senators will have 5,000 entries. It goes and goes. When you get to the Dodgers, they have like 58,000 entries. It's not even close. It's not even close.
That doesn't surprise me somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it almost surprises me every time I realize it and every time I see it, because it makes me proud that I had the opportunity and continue to have the opportunity. But when I was little, I had the opportunity to grow up in that atmosphere. It was I would go into the kitchen. My mother would be in the kitchen 90% of the time. She'd be washing the dishes. There's no such thing as a dishwasher back then. She'd be washing the dishes, and her radio on top of the refrigerator, or I should say icebox, because way back, it was an icebox. On top of the icebox was her little radio, and it was Vin Scully, and the Dodgers were on. And if the Dodgers had the bases loaded, and they left them loaded, and let's say Hodges popped out to shortstop for the final out of the inning, I would look at my mother, and she'd be looking down at the dishes she was doing. She would shake her head and quietly say, "Dumb Dodgers." Shake her head and just go, "Dumb Dodgers." But the whole family lived and died with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and that's the story. Basically, that's it.
Wow. And like you say, unfortunately, I did not get to experience it firsthand. I only know it vicariously through tales like the wonderful one you've just shared. But, truly, I mean, the Dodgers were not just a passion, but a way of life, a civic religion for Brooklyn. And I think that's why, people who come along and don't understand why more than 60 years later there is a lingering hurt, a lingering anger over what Walter O'Malley did by ripping that franchise, which was not a failing franchise, but still a prosperous franchise, the only team ever to draw over 1 million fans in its final season and move, to me, the hurt and the anger is absolutely understandable, isn't it to you?
Yes, it is.
Now,
it is understandable. And all of those points that you just raised are very important points. No other team that moved had drawn 1 million. And you know something? Fans today are spoiled because even a team like the Tampa Bay Rays or the Miami Marlins can draw 1 million. But back in the day, that was the mark. That was the mark that everyone shot for, 1 million. Because not too many franchises achieved 1 million people. Their home.
Yeah, it was very much standard. Yeah. It was an absolute big deal. And and even though throughout the 50s, even though attendance was falling throughout baseball, except in Milwaukee, where the miracle of the Milwaukee Braves was going on, that, you look at that post-war decade, and the team that led the National League in attendance, wins, and profits was the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about maybe what I would call the divergent nature of Brooklyn loyalties. Now, I know that you are a passionate Dodger fan to this day. No doubt you're celebrating their defeat of the Atlanta.
His phone crapped out. We lost the host. Well, he'll call back. Here he is. Okay. We lost you for a minute. No, your phone. There's something wrong with your phone. You're going in and out, Claire.
Okay. Still bad?
Still bad was the first 2 words I've heard.
Okay, well, I'm back.
Okay, now you're back. Now you're back.
Sorry about that. So this is,
all right.
I guess, the challenges of a cell phone. But anyway, the point is how, it's fair to say you definitely have followed, your passion for the Dodgers has followed them to the West Coast. And I know other Brooklyn fans who can say that. Some, I think really picked up that the Mets became the best replacement they had, and other folks, sadly, we see that they stopped going to baseball or following baseball games in 1957 when the Dodgers departed, which I find really sad, but yet understandable. So kind of your perspectives on the divergent nature of Dodger fans.
There's this big thing. First of all, people that stopped watching baseball altogether in 1957, I kind of doubt that that's true. I mean, they probably don't follow it the way they used to, But if they completely divorced themselves from it, they really weren't very big baseball fans to begin with. That's a personal opinion. That's a personal opinion. The other opinion I have is just as strong in that there are, I would say, I'm not going to put a percentage on it. I'm not going to say 50-50 because I really don't know, and it would be a guess. But there is a contingent of Brooklyn Dodger fans that said there are no more Dodgers. When they went to L.A., there's no such thing as Dodgers. They're the Los Angeles frauds. They're not the Dodgers. And then there are other fans who, like me, not unlike me, think that the Dodgers have just been on a very, very long road trip, and we still follow them. And it's much easier now, by the way, to follow them than it was when they first moved because you were always a day behind. You did not have the internet. You did not have ESPN on TV. You did not have MLB TV. All you had were the newspapers, and the Dodger games only started New York time. They only started at 11 p.m. And we were in bed by then. So, to follow the Dodgers back then was very, very difficult, if not impossible. But now it's very simple, very easy because of all the technology. And here's the deal. There's a group of people that love the Dodgers to this day, and there are a group of people that are very anti-Dodger to this day. And they think that the people like myself who stayed Dodger fans are being foolish and we're paying homage to Walter O'Malley. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Walter O'Malley, in no way, shape, or form, in my eyes, could be a hero of any type. People say, "Oh, he expanded baseball to the West Coast." That's horseshit. Baseball was going to expand. Let's face it, baseball was going to expand. He knew it. He wasn't stupid. He was a lot of things. He wasn't stupid. He knew it was going to expand. He wanted to be on the ground floor, and he was. Of course. And he made billions. Me being a Dodger fan in 2018 does not exonerate in any way, shape, or form Walter O'Malley. I don't forgive him in any way, shape, or form. No way. People that are hard-nosed Dodger haters, if I will, if you will, that used to love the Brooklyn Dodgers, but now they hate them. To me, they're biting off their nose to spite their face. That's my opinion. Again, this is all my opinion. When I turn on my TV set, and I see a Dodger, maybe he's standing on the pitching mound or whatever, and I see that white blouse with the blue Dodger script and the red number underneath the Dodgers and stuff, my heart does a little flip, a little flutter, if you will. It's a beat, or it speeds up a little bit for a second. And I always knew this. When I was very young, I didn't know this, but I came to realize this. We as fans root for the laundry. We root. I root for the blouse, for the jersey. I mean, Manny Machado. I was never rooting for Manny Machado until a couple of months ago when he was picked up by the Dodgers. And now, when the World Series is over and Machado opts for free agency and leaves the Dodgers, I will no longer pull for him or root for him. I root for the laundry. Whoever is playing on the Dodgers is, here's a good case in point. Sal Magley. He was a Dodger nemesis, Dodger killer, the biggest New York Giant. We all hated him. He gets traded to the Dodgers. We love him. We love the guy. Sure. He pitches a no-hitter for us. He gets us into the World Series. He pitches superbly. He's the barber, baby. We love the guy. And for years before that, we hated him with a passion. So my point is very simple. And I'll speak for myself, but I kind of think that this is true for a lot of people. I root for the laundry.
I understand that. But to now kind of circle it back to the fabled Boys of Summer, and you look at the core of that team, Hodges, Robinson, Campanella, Reese, Snyder, and, together for so many years, and maybe it's misty-eyed nostalgia, but how many fans do you see say, looking back to other teams that had stability of that era, but, that team was exceptional, I think, maybe in its stability, and so people really had the chance to follow those guys over multiple seasons, watch them go from young men to the peak of their career to the downside. And, I think, anybody wearing the Brooklyn laundry probably would have been the subject of passionate affection. But the fact that those men were so good and they stayed together so long, do you think that maybe kind of took the whole fandom to another level?
You make a very valid point, a very strong, valid point. Baseball has changed the whole concept of a player spending his 15 years, let's call it 15 years, his 15-year career in one city is no longer the case. I mean, every now and then it happens. Carl Yastrzemski, Robin Yount, I could go on, but it's rare. It's rare. Normally, a guy will play for a minimum of 2 teams, maybe even 3 or 4. So that aspect of falling in love with your everyday players, that's gone from baseball.
Mm-hmm.
That's completely gone. But it's a valid point that you bring up because it was, in fact, very real in Brooklyn in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. Very, very real. I mean, we knew, when the World Series was over, let's say when Bobby Thompson, I was too young for this, but I'm going to make a point. When Bobby Thompson hit the home run and the Dodgers were eliminated in 1951, every Brooklyn Dodger fan, every kid went to sleep that night and woke up the next morning and said to his father, well, you know what? In spring training, we're going to have Campanella, Hodges, Robinson, Reese, Snyder, Ferrillo, Newcomb. We all knew who was going to be there. Mm-hmm. There was no real hot stove league where, who's a free agent, who's playing out their option, who's going to get traded. Were there trades? Sure, there were trades. But as you just talked about 5 minutes ago, the core, the soul, if you will, of the Brooklyn Dodgers stayed there for over a decade. And it did, yes, in fact, add to the aura and the magic of the Brooklyn Dodgers. It did. Yes, it did.
And how could I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on there. How could I have left out, of course, the Emperor of Right Field, Carl Carrillo, as part of that group as well? And we didn't last understand Billy Cox, the best third baseman on earth, was part of that lineup for several of those years. So, and your thoughts? I mean, I think the passion.
You're breaking up again, Claire. You're breaking up again.
Okay. The passion. How about now?
Very good.
Are we good now?
Yes, we are.
Okay. The transplanted loyalty, the passionate loyalty of native Brooklynites or those who end up transplanted elsewhere, that on Roger Kahn and the Boys of Summer. And
you're gone again. You're gone again. After you said the Boys of Summer, your voice disappeared.
Darn it. Well, talking about your thoughts on how much that book
you're going to see when this show is finished and Ralph puts it up on the air and you play it, you're going to see how you've been disappearing and coming back for one word, disappearing for about 20, coming back for one word. The gist of what I got was something about Billy Cox and that's about it.
Okay. Well, also, Boys of Summer and how much that book has meant to the mystique.
Oh, boy. That, you know what? That book is number 2 on my list for just Brooklyn Dodger fans. Number 1 would be Golden Bucks, Bums. I think Bums was a better book. Yeah, Bums to me, this is all opinion, Bums to me would be number 1, followed closely by Boys of Summer. I loved it. These are books that, and I know how you feel personally, Claire, about books. Period. Just BOOKS books. Yes, I feel much the same way. And I picked these books up. I have all my bookcases in my den, but then I have loose books that are stacked around that are Brooklyn Dodger books. And by that I mean, you know, like Boys of Summer, like Bums, like, you know, Fred Clare's book. I could go on and on and on and on. There's like 25 of them around. And I will, every now and then, I will just pick one up without even looking, really, pick it up and open it in the middle and read 3 or 4 paragraphs of it. Because I've read all of these books more than once, definitely more than once, probably more than 5 times. I know I've read Bums and Boys of Summer about 10 times each, but, you know, and I pick these books up, I read a couple of paragraphs, I do this, I do that. The thing is that after a while, I started, this is years ago, this is like 10 years ago. I'll tell you a little thing that happened to me. About 10 years ago, I really thought that there was nothing more for me to learn about the Brooklyn Dodgers. Now, don't roll your eyes too loud because I can almost hear them rolling over the phone. But there was an episode of The Big Bang Theory where Sheldon, the protagonist, the main protagonist in Big Bang Theory, Sheldon says to his friends, well, I left school in February when I was 12. He was in college at the time. I left school in February. Why did you leave school in February? He said, they ran out of math to teach me. There was nothing more to teach. And about 10 years ago, I really thought that I had seen every photograph, read every story, heard every joke, every in-game situation, you know, yelling back and forth from dugout to dugout, and what player said this and that and this and that. Then I realized not only was I wrong, I was so far off base, to use a baseball analogy. There were thousands of, I still see photographs today, this very day, photographs of Brooklyn Dodgers and Ebbets Field and stuff that I had never seen before in my life. It amazes me. And I hear these stories, and when I was fortunate enough to interview Carl Erskine, he actually said something to me that threw me off my game in the very beginning of the show. I asked him a few questions, and we were discussing something, and he referred to me, Peter Trunk, as a, quote, Brooklyn Dodger historian, unquote.
Wow.
I almost flipped. I couldn't believe my ears. Only months later did I realize I'm among hundreds of Brooklyn Dodger historians. You're one yourself.
Right.
Robert Cole is one. You know what I'm saying?
A Facebook friend.
Bernie Rose is one. Linda Wilson is one. Ronnie Rabinovitz is one. We're all Brooklyn Dodger historians. We all have studied and read all of these quips and quotes and stories and games. We have things memorized, and we know what happened in the 52 World Series, and we know what happened in the 1949 World Series. And although I was 1 year old, I know what happened in the 1947 World Series. It's just unbelievable. I was, you know, sometimes I'm at a party and some guy will say, "Oh, that was way back. My grandfather, he went to Ebbets Field for the World Series in 1949." And I said, "Well, let me tell you something. the first game of the World Series in 1949, the Yankees won in the bottom of the ninth inning on a home run by Johnny Mize to win it 1-0. And the next day, Preacher Rose shut the Yankees out 1-0. So after 2 days, the World Series was tied a game apiece. The Yankees won the first one 1-0. The Dodgers won the second one 1-0. The guy looks at me and he goes, "How old are you?" And I said, "Well, I was only 3 when that happened, but I can read."
Right.
You know,
right.
I study this
The
stuff.
blessings.
I'm interested in this stuff.
Yep.
I'm interested. And that's the way you learn all of this stuff. It never ceases to amaze me. I almost not gave up 10 years ago, but I almost said, well, that's about it. Those are all the pictures I can download for Baseball Fever and Brooklyn Dodger Memories. And those are all the games that I could possibly remember and read about. And those are the books that then all of a sudden, all these books started coming out of the woodwork. Books that I had never realized were so really cool to, you know, like you could call them, you know, like B movies. Some of these books were like B books, okay? They were like B books. They didn't sell 1 million copies. They didn't make the New York Times bestseller list, but they were legitimate books on the Brooklyn Dodgers, on and about the Brooklyn Dodgers. And I started getting them off of Amazon, sometimes for $1, and reading them, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, there's so much to learn. And there's so much to discuss, and there's so much to it's really a pleasant journey in that it's the 180-degree opposite of work. Not work.
It is a joy.
For a guy like
it is
for me or you or one of us crazies, baseball crazies. We love it so much that we just delve into it, and sometimes 3 hours will go by, and we'll go, "Wow, I didn't even know I was still reading about this or still doing this." You know, I have to walk the dog, or I have to start dinner, or I have to do whatever, and it consumes you. It's really a blessing. I think it is anyway. I mean, I'm not one of those guys that retired and now I sit in the backyard in a chair and just stare at the tree. You know, so many things.
Still have your passions.
Yeah, I do. I do. Besides model trains, besides model trains, the Brooklyn Dodgers are definitely a passion.
Yeah, and I think passions are what makes life worth living.
Yeah.
And, very good observations you've made about kind of the explosion of availability of knowledge that, thanks to Amazon and other online used booksellers, these obscure books suddenly are much more visible and available. And you named off several passionate historians, Dodger historians. We all interact with each other on Facebook, and I think one of the beautiful things is we learn from each other, and that is so much fun as well.
Yeah. No doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. We have our little quirks, our little, whatever, like Robert Cole. When Robert Cole has a question about the Dodger cap, the B on the Dodger cap. Because that's one of my little things that I'm, and then, if he wants to know, well, what jacket what warm-up jacket did they wear in 1955? And I'll send them pictures of that or whatever. We all have our little niche, our little, corner of the history of the Brooklyn Dodgers that we, if I need to know something about when O'Malley was moving the team and how it was his idea to have a stadium where Shea Stadium was ultimately built. And then he, of course, denied it later, saying, how can we be Queens Dodgers? We can't be the Queens Dodgers, but we could be the Los Angeles Dodgers. Instead of moving 5 miles away, I can move 3,200 miles away. But, but the point is that I will go to Robert Cole about that. He'll ask me about the jackets and the caps. I'll ask him about, the Dodgers trying to secure land here or secure land there, or they were offered this or offered that, and what did Robert Moses say, and what did the mayor say, and Rockefeller, and the whole deal. He's up on all that stuff. So we feed off each other. We feed off each other, and it's a beautiful thing. It really is.
And it's a heck of a lot of fun. Well, Peter, I think we're hitting the point where we need to wind it down for this edition, but we could do an entire half hour another time just dissecting and playing Walter O'Malley. I don't want to get into national politics on this program because that can just be so volatile, but without naming the figure who is being referred to, somebody made this statement about a United States senator recently, and I think it would apply perfectly to Walter Francis O'Malley. Like a serpent covered in Vaseline.
Yeah.
Can't you see that?
Yes.
Just so slippery, slick, and smooth. You can't touch him, but he's dangerous.
Who would want to touch him?
Yeah, really. Well, a final thought, my friend, and then we'll wrap up this edition of Ask Claire.
Well, a final thought from me would be, right now, the Dodgers, as we do this program, the Dodgers have moved on to the National League Championship Series against the Milwaukee Brewers. I almost said the Milwaukee Braves. That shows how old I am. They defeat the Atlanta Braves and move on against the Milwaukee Brewers. And we'll see what happens. Kershaw starts game one, and now it's best of 7 instead of best of 5. And we'll see where that'll lead us. We just have to relax, and as much as we can relax. I talk a good game about relaxing when the Dodgers are involved in the postseason. But we'll just see what happens, and our fingers are crossed. My toes are crossed, my legs are crossed, everything's crossed, and we'll just keep a good thought, and hopefully we can bring something home. It's been 30 years. That's a long time.
Not as long as the Cubs waited, but still, that's a very, very long time. I will agree with you, my friend. All righty, my guest on this edition of Ask Claire is Brooklyn Dodger historian Peter Trunk, the title bestowed on him by none other than Carl Daniel Erskine, one of the key cogs of the Boys of Summer. Peter, it's been a pleasure. We'll do this again, okay?
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Claire. Thank you very much for having me. Good night.
Okay, and my borrowed sign-off until I come up with something more original, I will say to everybody listening, happy trails to you until we meet again.
This has been a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.